Greetings in the name of the Most High Yahuwah and his Son, Yahusha, to the 12 tribes that are scattered abroad. I am Brother Hiram, and I am bringing to you today this exhortation video, and I want you to know that the reason why I'm bringing these exhortation videos is that there are some gaps that are going to need to be filled, even after I put out all of the teachings on the subject of divorce and remarriage. It's impossible for me to cover every aspect and answer every question. And so that's what I'm using these exhortation videos for, is to help fill those gaps and to help answer those questions and to even pose some further questions of my own. And one aspect that I want to talk about today is best and worst case scenarios. And so what I mean by best and worst case scenarios, if we look at the three major positions when it comes to divorce and remarriage, we look at the marriage permanence position on which I stand. We look at the position of people who believe that there's at least one exception to divorce and remarriage, and that there are people that believe that Yahusha wasn't even talking about divorce at all. And so these are the three basic positions that people take. But what I want to do is I want to challenge all of us. I want to challenge all of us, especially you mores out there. All right, I want to challenge you. I want to challenge myself. I want to challenge all of us to ask ourselves the question, what if we're wrong? What if we are wrong on the position that we take? Okay, what if a brother is in a divorce and remarriage situation and I'm telling him he's wrong, but he's actually okay? Or what if a brother is in a divorce remarriage situation? You believe that adultery, infidelity is an exception for divorce and remarriage. And you tell this brother that, and he gets to the end of the rope and he finds that you were wrong and that he wasn't okay. Or what if you're telling a brother in that situation that Yahusha wasn't even talking about divorce, and he's in that situation, he trusts in what you're saying, and then he gets to the end of the rope and he finds that you were wrong. Okay? And so let's talk about best case scenarios and worst case scenarios if we happen to be wrong. Any of us could be wrong now, okay? Because let Yah be true and every man a liar, okay? So let's say that we're wrong in the position that we take. Now, let's say that I'm wrong in standing for marriage permanence, and I tell a brother who's in a divorce remarriage situation that he's wrong and he's actually okay, and that he decides to get out of what I would call an adulterous marriage, and he just stays single the rest of his life, attends upon the master without distraction. And a brother like that, he could still be saved. That's a best case scenario. And there are there are testimonies all over YouTube of people doing that very thing, that they're in situations where they got out of an adulterous marriage and their original marriage couldn't be reconciled, and they're just remaining unmarried rather than being reconciled. And that is a best case scenario that could come out of that if a brother were to do that, and he really didn't have to do that, but he still ends up being saved. Now, I know there are worst case scenarios. Yeah, I know that there are negative things that could happen if I was wrong and I told somebody that they were not okay in their divorce remarriage situation and they're actually okay. Yeah, I know bad things can come out of it, but the thing is that what I had just mentioned there, that a man could still be saved. Even though he does that unnecessarily, he could still be saved. That is a best case scenario when it comes to marriage permanence. But I'm bringing this out because those of you who believe that there's at least one exception for divorce and remarriage, and those of you that believe that Yahusha wasn't even talking about divorce, let's look at best and worst case scenarios with you. All right, let's say that you're telling somebody that, hey, Yahusha said, except it be for fornication. And so you're telling someone who's divorced and remarried because they got divorced over an infidelity situation. They got remarried. You're telling somebody that Matthew 19:9 says that they're okay in their divorce and remarriage. And they get to the end of the rope and they hear Yahusha say, depart from me, ye worker of iniquity. They end up going to hell because they die in adultery. Okay, so that is definitely a worst case scenario. If you're wrong, that is a worst case scenario. All right, let me ask you this. What's the best case scenario? What's the best thing that could come out of that? And the truth of the matter is, there is no best case scenario. Best case scenario, the brother dies in adultery, goes to hell. Worst case scenario, the brother dies in adultery, goes to hell. There is no best case scenario. Let's say that even beyond that, you're telling somebody Yahusha wasn't even talking about divorce. And so here you have someone that's divorced because of irreconcilable differences, goes and gets remarried. You tell them they're okay because Yahusha wasn't talking about divorce. He was only talking about putting away. He's only talking about putting away without a divorce certificate. So basically 99.9% of the people in America that are in divorce remarriage are justified under that doctrine, the way I understand it now. And so that person dies, finds out you lied to them, and they end up going to hell. Worst case scenario. What's a best case scenario? What's the best thing that could come out of that? Well, just like I said in that last case, there is no best case scenario. If they believe what you are telling them and they act upon that and they get to the end of the rope and find out you were wrong, best and worst case scenario, they die in adultery, they go to hell. And you know what? If that happens, you're going to hell with them. Whether you are saying that there's an exception for divorce and remarriage and there isn't, or whether you're saying Yahusha wasn't even talking about divorce and he was, that they're not going to enter the kingdom and you're not going to enter the kingdom either. And so the point I'm trying to make in this video is there is no best case scenario with you. All right, you're a more, you're a teacher, you're telling people that there's at least one exception for divorce and remarriage, or you're telling people Yahusha wasn't even talking about divorce. There is no best case scenario. There's a best case scenario if I'm wrong. People could still be saved. Okay, if I'm wrong, I tell them wrong, they act upon what I say. All right, there is a best case scenario, but there is no best case scenario with y'all. And I want you to really meditate on that and think about that and think about how serious this thing is. And see, I'm not here to pass judgment on you because a year ago I was in your shoes. A year ago I was telling people that they were all right in their situation. A year ago I was blinded to this. Okay, so yeah, there are people, had I not repented of that, there would be blood on my hands. There's people who I supported in divorce, in remarriage, people whose weddings I've gone to, people who I've put my signature on their marriage certificate as a witness. All right, so I've been in the same boat. So I'm not pointing fingers at you and condemning you. I've been in the same boat, but Yah has mercifully opened my eyes to this truth. So I'm not in that boat anymore, and I have repented of being a stumbling block to other people. But I want you to think about that. Mores, teachers, preachers, even regular brothers and sisters. I want you to think about that. That if you are wrong, you're telling people there's at least one exception for divorce remarriage, or you're telling people Yahusha wasn't even talking about divorce. If you are wrong, nothing good can come out of that if people trust what you say, they're in that situation, and they die. There's no best case scenario with that. So if you're not sure, then the safest route to go is marriage permanence, because at least some good can come out of that. At least people could still be saved if you're wrong. Now, I don't have any doubts about the position I stand on. And if you haven't heard my testimony regarding this, go back and listen to my testimony and you'll see why I am 100% convinced of marriage permanence. I am 10 toes down on marriage permanence. Whatever risk there is, and if you tell someone that and you're wrong, this could happen, that could happen, I'm willing to take that risk because I'm convinced of this thing. But what about you, though? What about you? I want you to think about that. All right. I want you to think about that. I want you to pray about that, because this is deadly serious. You know, I had a former pastor. He used to say that this is not serious as a heart attack. This is serious as AIDS. That's what he used to say. Well, that's what I say about this too. This is serious as AIDS. This is more serious than AIDS. So I want you to think about that. What is the best and worst case scenario if you are wrong?